Hello, my name is Hunter Hall. This is my presentation of Assignment 3 for Advanced Developmental Psychology at the University of West Alabama. This assignment was to read Chapter 5 and 6 and to take ideas from those chapters and to find scholarly articles or journals that are related to the ideas that. So that's what I did. I found ideas that I liked, stuff that interested me, stuff that I could relate to in my personal life, and I looked through articles and tried my best to find stuff that I understood, mainly was my big thing. So what I've done is I found two articles, one of which was done by the University of Minnesota to evaluate the development of language skills in students from age 2 to 6. They were doing this to better understand the development of these kids and to see how well they could talk to observers, the adults, during assessments. This was done by a lady with the last name Template. The article's title itself is Speech Development of the Young Child, the Development of Certain Language Skills in Children. The second article was written by Bushnell and Bedreau, and the title is Motor Development in the Mind, the Potential Role of Motor Abilities as Determinant of Aspects of Perceptual Development. This article was written in I think it was 1993, and it was, at the time, there was a resurgence in studying the motor development skills in children. This article attempted to tie motor development skills closely to perceptual development and cognitive development. Specifically, they tested the children's ability to reach for items like toys as a test to see how well they could perceive their environment and utilize their motor skills to interact with objects. I had two questions for Article 1. The first one is, why were there no students studied during their free play environment? I believe that the change in environment could change the results. The second question is that the article states that children were verbalizing more words when the article was written than when they were 20 years before. And I want to know what would be a possible cause for the observed students being better at communicating with adults than their predecessors. I don't expect to have just a formal reply, of course, but out of curiosity reading through that, the first thing I thought when I read that part of the article was, well, why are those kids better at verbalizing than their predecessors? I would just like a possible theory. For Article 2, I had two questions as well. Studies that include infants or toddlers 6 months or older. And this was based off of their ability to visualize their environment and interact around them. In the article, they state that some researchers believe that infants and toddlers could have interacted at a younger age than what they used for their study. So I want to know, could you do this study with a 4-month-old? The article said that it was like at 6 weeks old, you can start seeing the perception, the cues where kids are studying their environment by studying the way that they're looking, their facial gestures, their eyes. So I'm curious, did this study just decide we're going to filter our participants so we're going to go 6 months and older? Because I've done research projects before where I picked an age and I ran with it. But I want to know, at what age could you run these tests on infants and toddlers and get the same results? Because I'd like to know, at what point does this development, is this like the benchmark of your kids developing properly the way they're expected to by researchers and scientists and yada yada yada, so on and so forth? Is it 6 months old or is it 6 weeks? Because the article was very unclear. My second question is this study repeatable by using different motor development skills? If the observed children were asked to walk downstairs or walk in a straight line to an object, could they demonstrate the same depth perception, the same visual cues in their eyes, their face, that they understood what's going on? Could they grasp the object, or not grasp, because the idea is to get rid of the grasp, but could they perform a different test and get the same type of results that these kids are developing and they're hitting their benchmarks outside of using a grasp test? So part of the assignment is to give our perception or our belief on how the article could be better. So for Article 1, it's about the language development in children. And my wife is actually a speech therapist. So it's a little cheating. But like I said, I wanted to find something that I could relate to and understand in my personal life. So I spoke to her about the way that they observe children and the way they assess children, because she has to do articulation tests, and they have to study the way the kids are speaking to see if they're hitting developmental benchmarks at her job every day. I think she agreed with me. The kids need to be observed during free time, because some kids have test anxiety. The moment you put them in front of an adult with a clipboard who's checking off if they're saying words correctly, kids shut down. I work in the education field, and I recently did a reading test on a 7th grade student. He was reading at a 4th grade level, and it was the minute I had the little clipboard where I was checking off the words that I needed him to read, he clammed up. I gave him an article out of a magazine on football, and he read every word. So what I'm saying on that, the article could be better, and I guess it's by extension how the study could have been better, is by, if you're trying to see an honest reflection of the way a student talks daily, their vernacular, then you need to have them comfortable. If you work with kids, you know they jabber a lot, unless they're nonverbal. If they're, there's developmental things at play that cause them to be nonverbal. Kids like to talk, and they'll just tell you honest stories. They'll tell goofy stories. Had a kid argue with me over what I was allowed to have as a favorite dinosaur not too long ago. So if you're wanting to know how kids speak and how well they can, articulate their everyday words, you need to talk to them about their everyday interest. You need to go out there during playtime and, talk to them about the game they're playing. If it's tag, if it's, hide and seek, if it's throwing a ball or keep away or whatever. Talk to the kids about stuff they're interested in. That's going to help you understand their language better, or their language skills better. And I really think the article could have been better if they at least gave a theory as to why some kids were speaking better than their predecessors 20 years before. Like, the article states that these kids are verbalizing better than the ones who were studied 22 years ago. Why? Just answer why. How I think that Article 2 could be better, I think they should use more forms of assessment. I think if you're going to study how well people can take a test or an assessment, then you need to have multiple avenues for assessment. As I said, I work in education, and when we do assessments in the classroom, you have to be aware of differentiation. Hope I pronounced that right. But the idea behind it is, if a student doesn't speak English as a first language, then you need to give them an avenue to take the test or assessment in a way that they can understand it. So if you have to give the assessment in their native language, or if you have to have an interpreter, you meet the kid at a level that they can pass the assessment. If the student has developmental issues that make it their ability, they're not able enough to take the assessment, then you need to be aware of what that 504 IEP plan calls for, so that kid can either get time in the special education room with a special education aide or teacher to help them with their test, or give them more time on a test, or move them away from distracting areas so they can take their test or assessment or whatever. And I don't think that this article or this assessment, that the study that these researchers did when they were trying to study students' ability to perceptually, see their environment around them and interact, it's got an understanding that everybody's on the same level, and I just don't think we all are. If you have a kid who has all the perceptual development in the world at the age being studied, but they have small hands, or they're not able to move their hands, they don't have the fine motor skills or the motor control to move their hands enough to pass this test, or have a lower score on the assessment, whatever, I don't think that's giving them a fair shot. So if you gave an assessment where a student was, instructed to walk a straight line, and you observe how well they can walk the straight line to get to a toy, or give them like a mini obstacle course where it's like they're in NASCAR and they've got to go forward and then turn left, and then go forward then turn left, and they do so over and over until you give them the toy as the reward at the end. My point is, if you want to observe how well students are developing perceptually, then give them multiple ways to show you that. Because if you're only looking at how well they can grasp things, you're not looking at how well they can sit up. You're not looking at how well they can walk, how well they can, go up or down stairs, if they can climb, if they can slide. I think that this article was missing out on other ways of assessing the students being observed because it only focused on one. And like I said, I've done research projects before. This may have been they were simply just saying, this is our avenue of testing, this is our control group, like these are the kids that we're going to focus on, and that may have been it. But I think it could be better if they introduced other ways of assessing students. Thank you for your time. I hope that I've done everything properly. This is my first time recording like this. If there's anything else I can do, or if you have any questions for me, you can email me. Thank you for your time this semester.